Back in the village, Wangari and Belebia bend the bows into shape between stakes driven into the ground. Little Ali watches them. Now they must go to the blacksmith to ask him to make an arrowhead. Mukhaila, the blacksmith, will make an arrowhead for 2 cents. A small piece of iron is cut to the proper length. It's then heated and twisted into spirals, which will hold the poison. Then, onto the anvil, where it is straightened, barbed, flattened. It is then cooled in the sand and sharpened. Tahiru Koro, the chief of the hunters, now has a new arrowhead. The arrow shaft is made from reeds gathered in the bush. Wangari then trims and straightens them on a spearhead. He rounds off the ends and carves in the knock for the bowstring. He reinforces each end with gut. He then drives the iron head into the shaft. Tightens the wrappings. And strengthens them with glue. The arrow isn't feathered, but if it's perfectly straight, it will go right to the target. Nadyi, the poison, is made from the fruits of a tree which doesn't grow in the land of the hunters. They must go far to the south, perhaps 300 miles, to the Handalai forest. Tahiru and Yeya, with the help of Fudi, another hunter, go there to get the Nadyinya, the mother of Nadyi, which comes from a stropatus, a poison tree. This is a tree with twisted branches whose pods contain grains within which one can find the Nadyi poison. Early one morning, the hunters get ready to make the poison. This is a very serious procedure which takes place every 4 years and in which women are not allowed to take part. They go into the bush because it is in the bush where wicked things are made. The hunters go to a tokai tree. It is in the shade of this tree that generations of hunters have prepared the Nadyi, the poison. Tahiru and his assistant, Siddiqui, undress themselves. They put on the benta, a pair of short leather pants, which is supposed to be the only kind of clothing worn by the men of the past. Tahiru and Siddiqui have shaved their heads in order to purify themselves. They dig the hearth in which they'll boil water. With some ashes, Tahiru, the chief of the hunters, draws a keli, a magic circle into which no one may enter, especially evil. Only Tahiru and Siddiqui may enter the magic circle. Inside it, they will make serious and wicked things. Nadi, the poison. Now the great operation begins. With his hands crossed, Siddiqui walks 7 times around the jar which has been placed on the hearth. Into it, he drops handfuls of nadi, the seeds of the poison tree. By crossing his hands, he's like the animal who will be struck by the arrow and whose feet will be bound.
Trobriand Islands have a population of 15,000 and a unique way of playing cricket. In British cricket, the parent game, 2 batsmen take turns to protect wickets of 3 stumps from the bowler. 1 run is scored by 1 safe crisscross of the running batsman. A batsman is run out if the ball strikes the wicket while he is outside his safe area, or if he is bowled out, or if his hit is caught, or if he is stumped by the wicket-keeper while outside the safe area marked by the crease line. A team consists of 11 players plus a reserve. The game is known for its slow pace. The game originated in England in medieval times. By the 18th century, it was played on village greens with underarm bowling and curved bats. The score was kept by notching a stick. The game is played today in international matches and on village greens, had evolved by the late 19th century. About the same time, British colonialism arrived in New Guinea. Alien institutions were imposed on the people. Missionaries brought their own moral values. And government officials colonized Papua from the capital, Port Moresby. In self-governing Papua New Guinea, some of these institutions have taken hold in their familiar form: parliamentary democracy in the House of Assembly, and cricket, which is played enthusiastically by official rules in many parts of the country. This is a weekend match between neighboring villages in the Hula area, east of Port Moresby. International equipment and techniques are used, including the obligatory overarm bowling. But in the Trobriands, the game has undergone a remarkable cultural transformation. Among other things, it is now played with dances and chants that have been especially created for the game. Leaders of a local political movement, among them university-educated Trobrianders and respected men of rank, discuss how and why these changes occurred.
Na bogo ya bieste dele katubu blasa ya tudo mais.
Ya, bogo ka skara ko wala. Dele mo kasi bate si bate wala din. Yung si ka sa kasi te sili. Tato ko la bate la din. Pele kuni bogo kiti bole tulo ki istegi mo duato. Duato si biwo ko mo le. Bigi se boli bitau si kula si le bisa kasi. Bigi ko sa katu gogo bisa kasi. Mo mahawal. Ela. Como dona ele alo si boli. Bueno, bola ka. Boga itulo. Ko le katu kwa pini si le mahawal si lo alo si bola. Kita ga khala ga boli dim kiri la wala bese wa si sai ya si le to ga le bese la. Giga. Taga cricket bola si tu o kala din.
Among the earliest Europeans on the Trobrians was the Reverend M.K. Gilmore, who introduced cricket in 1903. Supporting him was a contingent of Fijian missionaries, who themselves added ideas about how the game could be played. The first players were early converts to the Methodist Church. The game was played on the grounds of the mission headquarters. Government control of the Trobrians was established through resident white officials and the Papuan police force. Traditional warfare was stopped, but government policy sought to prevent the disintegrating effects of this change. Conveniently, mission games were introduced for entertainment as a substitute for warfare and to encourage a new morality. As seen in this film from 1950, the cricket of Gilmore's time, though more exuberant than its international counterpart, still survived in the few areas under strictest European domination.
Esa la saga kalaba wa tomo takida mkwata la kaita la kele pibila makala kalaba wa luwa bas abi wa kuna luwa li ma ka evita ula sibweta e kaya sa e wa ngi se kaya sisa e ko sisa bogola ko ve sa wala ka pela gala e mole gi sisa na krivila e to uli so
As the game spread into outlying villages, one of the first changes was to enlarge the sides to any number of players, and dress became the dress of war. To equalize the numbers, players paired off in lines that symbolized their previous formations for war. But the fundamental change in the game came in the purpose for playing. Competition became ritualized and also political. Trobrianders call this kind of competition kayasa. In Carl Gardens and Their Magic, the famous anthropologist Malinowski wrote, "Kayasa is a generic name for any period of competitive obligatory activity. It is always organized on a definite pattern with a ceremonial according to its kind." Unquote. Gifts of prestige food underlie the politics of kayasa. A man or group builds reputation in society by organizing and paying for kayasa competitions.
Pela mtono tunugwana bile mo mai. Oda bale sele mkwasi makala lo hai. Sa la bola
Kalasa.
Ndaga olu utura usaya kida singa mo sim no mkwasi oda bala wa ki. Kipitu kwasi. Kaya bese kiri kiti kala do sia dim ina piti si to lo ki boga mo to balo da si. Besa ga ai se ki ya da se ta ga se ta.
Sama buda na boda to wa ya kana
Toyamata. To sina kala ga we wala bi we.
Ga mna sapato sa wiki ti guavu sa o velia me sapato.
Kala
guavu. Pela besa o ya bi wa smigava la ga.
Gal.
Wa.
Many obstacles barred the way of their physical and psychological recovery. They were exclusively dependent on a healthcare system that took neither their beliefs nor their culture into account. The sudden arrival of the Khmer took many healthcare facilities by surprise. Major adjustments were needed to be made by both the healthcare providers and the refugees. Tensions and misunderstandings were inherent in this adjustment. Both the refugees and the Western health professionals stood strongly by their respective systems of belief.
Most of the people don't want to go to the hospital. Especially for the people who came from Cambodia. I mean the people in the countryside. They don't want to go to the hospital. They are afraid of the hospital.
I spoke with my people in this country that how do you feel when you go to deliver the baby in the hospital? They said, we're scared to death, but what can we do? They have no midwife in this country.
When we took the X-ray one time, they believed that we lost 1 year old. You understand that? Yeah, most of them believe that, like my mother. She doesn't want to go to the hospital at all. She has a Medicaid. She doesn't have to worry about to pay the bill, the hospital bill, but she's still afraid.
Some people, I found out they're pregnant 7 months, and they told me that I'm pregnant 7 months now. And we tried to ask her, why don't you go to see the doctor? She said, why you have to go to see the doctor? When we was in Cambodia, we never went to see the doctor, and we delivered the baby, and the baby are okay. And we tried to explain clearly to them that in this country, you have to see the doctor almost every month to make sure that the child is okay.
When they don't understand well, when you do the blood draw, that they believe the blood is very important for life. So if you take the blood, that means you almost take a part of their children's life. So they feel like upset or depressed with that.
The Khmer expect both traditional and Western healthcare practitioners to diagnose and treat an illness immediately. If additional tests are needed or medicine is not prescribed, the Khmer patient may doubt a doctor's skills and seek help elsewhere.
When they go to see the doctor, they expect something from the doctor, especially the medicine, just to talk with the client and have blood tests, because a lot of people go to see doctor, have blood tests, and send the client back home, and they get very angry.
They want medication. Why the doctor don't give me medication and draw my blood? And because I came here, I am sick, and I left the center without medication. I don't want to come here anymore.
Well, they come to you like with 40 degrees or 41 degrees centigrade high. They want a child cured in the next day, or at least having the fever going down. If you don't satisfy, they go to another doctor.
The Khmer closely link symptoms to disease. If there is no pain and no visible symptom, there is no sickness. This view creates continual difficulties for preventative health care and successful medical treatment of the Khmer.
The doctor tell them take 10 days because your child has the infection. They take 3 days and the fever, no fever and no symptom appear. They don't want to continue. Why continue medication? Because my child okay now.
When a patient comes with positive PPD and after a negative chest X-ray, they should undergo 12 months of INH prophylaxis, like 1 tablet daily. And while they took the medicine, they feel that they are not sick. Why they should take it and for 12 months and every day, and they don't like it because they don't understand, really don't understand well why they should take it.
Difficulties in ensuring successful health care for the Khmer are magnified by problems of language and culture. In the refugee camps, providers turned to the refugees themselves to overcome these cultural barriers, or sought the support of the Kru Khmer.
We spent considerable time discussing our views of medicine with our translators. We called them translators. They were much more than translators. They were essentially the primary healthcare deliverers in the emergency room. As soon as they understood, the translator, what we were asking for, I'm sure they translated their questions in a way that was not a direct translation of our questions to him or to her, but included his knowledge of what we wanted and what their culture was likely to say.
It's hard for me to hear when people are giving me cultural information about how they understand their bodies. It's hard for me to hear the basis of it. You know, I sort of hear, that doesn't make sense to me. What I can tell you is that people see their bodies very differently than is what's sort of straight out of the textbook.
Because they don't view disease in that same context that we've taught Western people to view disease. I mean, when a mother brings in a child, in this country we say, how long has the child been sick? And we usually follow that with the question, has the child had this kind of illness in the past, and if so, when? So there's many time questions included in that. We simply couldn't ask those questions of the Cambodians, and obviously the language could easily be used properly, but the culture did not have the same meaning for those language terms.
That's why I tell myself the bridge, because translation and then let both sides understand each other. I let the doctor understand the patient and let the patient understand what the doctor do.
There have been few changes in the treatment-seeking patterns of the Khmer. Many continue to rely on home treatments and Asian medicines available in the West.
Most of the herbal medicine that they use, they don't talk to us about, and I think that they get a lot more reinforcement for using when they go to the Chinatown Health Clinic. And I think there's a lot of that. I think that because of perhaps the cultural similarities, a lot of our patients will use both systems. We'll go to Chinatown and use more herbal kinds of medicines that they have to offer, and then we'll also come up here. And I think the order in which they come depends on which works. You know.
The doctor cannot tell this is wrong, this is right. Recommendation just to encourage patient the way the patient think what to do best. If the doctor tell this is bad way, this is the good way, I think the patient couldn't come anymore.
I think one of the mistakes that we made in the very beginning was not to take into consideration those cultural differences, and I think we're still learning them a lot. I think that initially we would see children who came in who had been coined and had bruises on their chest walls and who had purple circles on their foreheads, and you're like, what is going on here, or you'd see children with scars on their abdomens, and when you work in New York City and you see that, you think somebody's burning this kid with a cigarette.
Some doctors understand about our culture. They will not ask why you use coin rubber, because if you ask too many questions to the client, and he will get very upset. Why don't I use my belief?
there's no question that you have to respect these traditions. I mean, I think that many of these traditions are age-old and lifelong and part of what people bring with them to this country. I mean, I think that one basic reason to respect them is that it's important that people who come to this country not have all their cultural remnants be taken away from them. Clearly, some of the things that they've been doing for years and years are valuable. I think there are things that they've been doing for years and years that aren't valuable, and I think it's important that we teach families about that. I think it's important that we educate them that if they're doing things that are harmful to their children, that they don't do those things.
The Khmer view the body and mind as one. Depression is felt as an overall loss of well-being. For comfort and relief of stress, the Khmer are turning to local healthcare facilities.